My video for October 4th, 2019 is video number 3227. And is that right? I think that's right. If it's not, I'll make the correction, but it won't be in the video. The title is, What is Truth? And Does It Matter? Yes, this verse will be familiar to all those like me who grew up with the Bible. And I quote, Pontius Pilate saith unto him, What is truth? And when he had said this, he went out again unto the Jews, and saith unto them, I find in him no fault at all. That's John 18:38 in the King James Version. Is the story true? I used to believe it. I'm not so sure anymore, unfortunately. I was taught that every word in the Bible was true, and King James drew scholars from all over the world, from all over the empire rather, to decide what was pure scripture and what should be left out. They left out a lot, including many things I now question. I guess the more important question is, does it matter? Well, I guess it depends on where a person grew up, what they were taught, and what they expect. What do you expect? What is true for you? These are timeless questions in a world where many say time is just an illusion. If so, then what unfolds is not even real. It matters to me. I still want to see heaven on earth in my lifetime. My magician friend, Steve Hart, ... Yeah, I'm actually recording this video, the blurb was written a couple of days ago already, except for the last thing about Steve Hart. And the reason I added that is because Steve, as I've said, is a magician, and he does some tricks that I mean, I'm sitting right in front of him and I don't see how it happens. It looks like magic to me, but it's a sleight of hand thing and you simply don't see. But he explains to me, that is, Steve does, that it's just sleight of hand. But I have watched magicians do things like suspend a person in midair and put a hula hoop all the way across them. There's obviously no wires attached if you can put the hula hoop all the way from one end of the person's body to the other, and yet there they are suspended in midair. I mean, that's a magic trick, right? I mean, I've watched performances on video, not in person, like that, and Steve has met magicians all over the world and has interacted with them. And recently, he manifested in his world a beautiful lady who they have really connected, and I got to spend some time with them this week because of my friendship with Steve. And he, like me, now questions a lot of the things we were taught. We see the contradictions in the Bible that, at least for me, when I was younger, I couldn't see them because I was told that every word in the Bible is true. But of course, King James was a monarch. He had an ulterior motive, which is why he left out the book of Enoch, because that raises some questions that would have been uncomfortable for the leaders. And other things that were referred to in the Bible do not exist in the King James Version. There were 66 books that were considered inspired, but I have read the Apocrypha and some of the books that were left out, and some of those things are pretty interesting, to say the least. And so we don't know what truth is because there are contradictions in the Bible itself, even in the King James Version itself. Like the jealous God thing that I've mentioned so many times in so many videos over the years. How could an omnipotent, all-loving God be jealous of anything? That's an obvious insertion of a man or of a creature's opinion who was trying to deal with ego matters and put forth the idea that they were somehow special. Well, the idea of specialness is another way of separation, which is not loving. It's loving to protect your children, but then Anastasia allowed her son to try everything and tasted things that weren't good, but he was observed, and he didn't eat anything that was going to kill him. Obviously, he survived, and she was to me the ideal mother and the type of individual that was way ahead of her time. She could literally dematerialize in one spot and rematerialize in another spot. How did you do that, Anastasia? Well, it happened, and it blew Vladimir's mind. That's Vladimir Megre, who wrote the books, all 9 of them, and I don't know who wrote the 10th one. I never read the 10th one because initially there were only supposed to be 9. Whether they called the last 2 8A and 8B or not is irrelevant. Anyway, folks, the point that I'm trying to make with this video is that we really don't know all of the truth. We have to come to realize that much, perhaps even most, of what we've been told in our religion and especially in our politics has been manipulated for an agenda which now in our modern era, modern day and age, seems malevolent. I mean, war became the way to make a lot of money, and money itself, as I've said so many times, is a means of enslavement, not a means of setting people free, because it creates a competitiveness in life between the haves and the have-nots. Everybody has a role to play, and we all should be both servants and masters. Not an either or thing, but a both and thing. Again, everything is both and. It's both true, there's truth in it, but we have to separate the wheat from the chaff and spit out the poisons. We have to learn discernment. This is something, again, that I keep saying over and over again in my videos, because to accept what we've been taught blindly leads to very foolish conclusions, and worse, it leads to an egomaniac, a manic condition where the person thinks whatever they believe is true and it's the only right way. And yes, it does matter, because all crime comes from misappropriating things that we are told are true or not true. And it creates an unhealthy competition between those that believe one thing and those that believe something else. And it precludes the ability to listen and therefore the ability to love. It's really hard to listen to anybody when you're headbutting. I mean, when somebody says to somebody else, "You're wrong," that automatically creates a division and a separation. But if you approach it with different language and you ask questions, instead of making blanket statements, that you ask questions, well, what if, or have you considered? And we all need to consider things that are happening in our lives that just simply don't add up if we are in fact to love one another, which I do believe all inspired teachings say, whether it's Shakespeare or some holy book. All of them say that we should love and we should tell the truth. Obviously, we live in a world where those values are precluded. Thank you, folks, for listening, and namaste.